Hello guys and gals, and welcome. So, I have been no-lifing the ever-loving crap out of this game to the point of absurdity, and there are things to love about this game, definitely, and there are things to hate about this game, definitely. But one of the more fun things in this particular game that I felt like we could go over today and to end this video is Starship Design. I plan to cover everything that I possibly can in Starship Design, so if you will join me as I go through this rather broad and rather obnoxiously complicated topic, we are going to talk about it step by step, and hopefully by the end of this you will have a firm understanding of Starship Design and also be out there making your own badass starships. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. Alright, so the first thing we need to cover is the basics. But before we do that, let me give you a quick little tip here. So, are you having trouble getting your ship to land on your landing platform? As you can see right now, my ship is currently over there for no particular reason. One of the easiest ways to get your ship to land on your landing platform is to go into the shipbuilder control console, click on View and Modify Ships, go to the ship that you would like to go on the landing platform. This has to be your home ship, by the way, and then press E to upgrade ship. Go into the upgrade menu and then exit out. And as soon as you do that, the ship will appear on the platform and you will be ready to go. Now the shipbuilder thing that you can build for your outposts, unfortunately, and this is something that I'm going to have to give you all a nice big slap in the face with a fish, is this shipyard does not offer all of the available resources to build your ships and is not the best place to build your ships at all. Do not build your ships on these. These are great for modifying your ships later on. If you want to modify a specific doojank on your ships, like if you just want to take, whatever it is on your ship and maneuver it around a little bit or add something, that you might have forgotten. But if you're trying to get the best modules, the best of the best of the best, sir, the shipyard at your base is not the correct base, and I'll go over that later. But let's go into the ships, and we're going to take a look at the different components of the ships, and I'm going to explain them piece by piece. So first off, when you are building a ship, there are some very specific things that you have to know. There are three different classifications of ships. There is an A-class ship, there is a B-class ship, and there is a C-class ship. These ships are qualified by the reactor itself. So if you have an A-class reactor, this is an A-class reactor, as you can see here. This A-class reactor is only capable of using A-class parts. However, if you have a B-class reactor, like for instance the Z machine here, the Z machine is capable of using B-class and A-class parts. Also, there is a C-class. The C-class reactor is capable of using all three parts. So the C-class can use C-class parts, B-class parts, and A-class parts all on the same ship. C-class parts in general are better than pretty much all the other parts, although there are some strict kind of exclusions to this, where sometimes, for instance, like this B-class engine, which seems to be an experimental module, is kind of better than the C-class options that you have available to you. And, well, we'll talk more about that later. However, this engine itself, or the reactor, is capable of putting out power. The power that the reactor is putting out is going to fill up the power of each module. So, for instance, if I have a weapon that says that it has a, damage of, 55, it's got range, blah, 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 it says max power 4, which means that to get the full potential out of this weapon, to get the full damage out of this weapon, you have to apply 4 power to this weapon to utilize it. Which means that if I have 1, 2, 3, that's 4, 4, 4, which is a very nice 12, right? So 12 maximum power, which means that to get maximum power out of 3 of those guns, I need 12 maximum power. As you can see by the reactor of the A-class, I only have 14 power generated from this reactor. So if I put every single ounce of power I had into those guns, I could power all the guns, but then I would only have 2 power left over. So the higher reactors definitely put out more power. As you can see, the B-class is 28 and the C-class is 34, and so forth and so on. There are also experimental modules, and this is very interesting. So when you capture ships, you will often find there will be a ridiculously good module on a ship that, well, doesn't otherwise exist, right? So let's go ahead and register this ship, which, by the way, the registration fee for all ships is like 87.41% of the value of the ship, so it makes it completely useless to capture ships and sell them. It sucks. But take a look at the reactor on this ship. So if we go into the shipbuilder, this ship has a reactor which is currently a power generation of 40, and it has a Class C ranking as well. And if you look down here at the bottom, you'll see that it says Piloting Rank 4 required and Starship Design Rank 4. This is a high-end, high-class reactor that was basically just randomly on this pirate vessel that I captured. This is the core and the heart of your ship. So keep in mind that the reactor, which is the main piece of the ship that you're interested in, is going to be what's supplying power to your entire vessel and all of the modules that you have on it. This also means that certain modules, while they may seem better in practice, if they require huge amounts of power to obtain that goal, they might not be as good as you will think. There's also abilities like anaerotic fusion, which allow you to generate more units of power from your ship's reactor. So if you can get level 4 anaerotic, neutronic fusion, you can get up to 5 extra units of power on your reactor, which is definitely very nice because that's going to allow you to put more power to your modules. There is also other things that you're definitely going to need access to. As you could see by that experimental module, having piloting up to rank 4 is very important. Now, I was talking about the classes of the reactors and the classes of the ships. If you do not have piloting rank 3, you cannot pilot rank Class B ships. If you do not have piloting rank 4, you cannot pilot Class C ships. So it is important that you get your piloting to rank 4 to be able to do this. Also, the modules that you have available to you are going to be restricted if you don't have Starship Design. So you want to make sure you get Starship Design rank 4 as well, because this is also going to come into play in what modules are available to you. However, even if you have piloting rank 4, and even if you have Starship Design rank 4, there will still be modules that are not shown to you. And there are a couple reasons for this, and we're going to go over them later. But for right now, let's get back into the design of the ship. The second thing that you're looking at, besides your reactor, is your Grav Drive. Now, your Grav Drive has a maximum jump range, which is represented by Grav Jump Thrust. Mine is currently 45. And as you can see, though, according to what's down here, my jump range is only 30. The reason why my jump range is only 30 is because of the weight of the ship. The more the ship weighs, the less the jump range gets. And eventually it will get to the point where, well, you're not able to jump very far at all. If I were to just go under here, and I believe I can just simply stack on some more really heavy cargo containers like the Galleon S204, which is massive. Let's just go ahead and stack on several of these. You'll notice that my jump range is decreasing. I am now at 28 jump range down here at the bottom, which I know I'm covering up some of this stuff, but I'm not covering up the jump range. You should be able to see that right there. The jump range is going to go down the heavier your ship becomes, and the more weight that you add on here, the more that jump range goes down. Now, what does jump range actually matter in terms of getting places? What does it actually matter? Well, if we take a look at the star systems in the star map, what you'll notice is that jumping to particular star systems requires a specific jump range. If I click on Copernicus, for instance, and I go set course to Copernicus, which of course I'm currently over-encumbered. I'm always over-encumbered in this game. It's just one of the worst things about this game is I swear I can never not be over-encumbered. Never. It's next to impossible. So we're getting our cockpit here so I can show you. And if I set my course to a particular solar system, you'll notice that it says jump range 30, distance 9.058 LY, which means that I'm well within the jump distance for this particular place. However, let's take a look at some of these further away planets. Like, for instance, if we were to set a course to Leonis, the jump range for this is 84.625 because I've got to go through several solar systems, right? So let's go to Denobula real quick. And the thing is that for jump range, it's not that big of a deal as long as you are... As long as you are traveling, solar system to solar system. But the problem comes into play when you try to travel to a solar system that's just really far away from you. Some of them just have really long jump ranges. And as you can see right here, the distance between these two solar systems, the Denobula solar system and the Sagan solar system, is 25.90. Which means that if I had less than a 25.90 jump range, which would be 26, because I don't think you can have fractions of jump ranges, this can become an issue and you will not be able to jump to that particular solar system. And I have had situations where I was unable to jump to a specific solar system because my jump range wasn't large enough. Now, the smaller engines, the smaller jump range engines, definitely do have that issue. So when you're in the Class A ships, what you're going to notice is the Class A ships just have absolutely horrible jump range, and in general, you're going to be restricted to certain solar systems, closer solar systems in general. And it's not until later on where you start to get access to the bigger jump engines, the ones with more grav thrust and things like that, that you can access all the solar systems. And there are some solar systems that are very, 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 very restricted behind these massive jump ranges. Now, if I wanted to make this particular ship into a long-range jumper, I could probably do it. It would take a little bit of time. It's also important to note that jump range can be affected by outposts in the area. So if you do have outposts, in that particular area, you can refuel at those outposts and whatnot. Speaking of fuel, let's talk about the fuel tanks. So, fuel tanks are things that you put on the ship to power your flight through the stars. This is a grav jump fuel tank with 250 grav jump fuel in it. That's pretty much all it is. It's just grav jump fuel. And when you are looking at the ability to travel between the stars, what you're going to notice is that as you set a course, it's going to tell you how much fuel it's going to take to get to a particular place. So how much fuel would it take me to get to, say, Ophion or something along those lines, right? Well, it is interesting because, like I said, you can refuel at outposts, so this changes depending on which solar systems you have outposts in. And as you look at the fuel consumption, like for instance, if I were to pick something really far away, like let's go to the outer edge of the galaxy here at Bower, and let's plot a course to Bower 4. Notice now it says fuel consumption right above my head, right here. Fuel consumption, 316.8 out of 500, which means it's going to take more than half of my fuel to get to this solar system by traveling this route. However, notice, see there's I have an outpost in Crix, right? So Crix is a place that I can refuel at. So if I were to go to, let's say, one of these solar systems that I have another outpost in, which is Jaffa. Jaffa has an outpost, and I think I got to go through... It's hard to tell sometimes where... Because there's not like a set route through some of these solar systems. No, not that one. There we go. So now you see Jaffa is an outplace that I have an outpost. So I'm only spending 134.1 to get to Zai Ofiuchi because I'm refueling at the outpost. Fuel consumption really doesn't seem to matter all that much. You can make multiple jumps. There are other ways that you can deal with things besides adding a million fuel canisters on your ship. But if you want to have a lot of fuel canisters so you never have to stop and refuel, that's certainly something that you can do. It seems to me in general when it comes to ship design that the fuel canisters are kind of just a last minute thing that I usually throw in there. I try and squeeze them in somewhere. I'll hide them if I have to. Some of them are kind of ugly, like I mean, these actually look like a pair of balls that you'd have on the back of your ship. You put some balls on your ship. Some of these have very huge mass as well, you know, as big swinging balls do. But as you can see, this one is only 100 grav jump fuel for 16 mass, whereas the ones that I have on my ship right now are 250 for 25 mass. Mass has a lot to do with how your ship works. And the thing about mass is that the heavier your ship gets, the worse all of your statistics will be. And it's very important to note this. You have a lot of different statistics on a ship. There are things like your ability to travel relatively quickly. Let me see if I can show you here. So this particular ship, when you go into Ship Builder, has a mobility of 32, and let me move myself out of the way really quickly so you guys can see this. It has a mobility of 32, and that's because it's a very heavy ship. It has 3,025 total mass, which is a pretty massive doojank, right? It also has 8,500 cargo, which is the reason why it's so heavy. This is just a really big, massive cargo hauler, basically, that I made specifically for the purposes of designing, you know, ships. I wanted to make some really cool designs, and I wanted to be able to I don't really know how to put it other than I wanted to get everything that I wanted. I want to have my cake, and I wanted to eat it too, right? So let's move on to the next topic here, which is your engines. So the engines are things that you can put onto your ship, and they have classifications too. So the tanks do not have classification. However, the reactors and the grav drives do, as well as the engines. Now, you can get a myriad of engines, everything from engines that will mount to the top or bottom of something. You can get engines that will mount to the side of your ship. You can even get big, giant, honkin' space engines like this that will just, like, mount to the side of things, but take up, like, massive amounts of space. And there's also engines that are just absolutely ridiculously massive, like things like the Supernova 2100, which is just a big giant rocket, right? But every single one of these has three main characteristics. There is the mass, which is very important to keep in mind, because the bigger the engine is, like for instance this 334 mass engine, it takes up a lot of mass on your ship, which can therefore cause your ship to lower its top speed, lower its jump range, and also lower the mobility. So keeping in mind the mass of the engine, along with the engine thrust and the maneuvering thrust, you can figure out a pretty good combination. Another important thing is the maximum power that the engines can consume. You can never use more than 12 maximum power on any category. As you can see here, the engine has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 energy pips within the engine category. All categories have 12 energy pips, which means that you can only put a certain number of engines on your vehicle dependent on the maximum power of the engine itself. For instance, this particular engine right here is a 3, which means that you can do 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you can have a total of 4 of these engines. This big old beastie right here is a 3, and this one is also a 3. This one is a 2 right here, the A-Moon 7 engine. So the A-Moon 7 engine is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, right? So you can have 6 of these engines, and so forth and so on. And there are also bigger engines that have a 4 as well, if I remember correctly, although they may not be available in my shop specifically. So the amount of thrust that you're getting from the engine is important. The maneuvering capability of the engine is important, but also keep in mind the maximum power that the engine has. So you may have a very nice engine that has a pretty good mass to thrust ratio, but it might have a very high cost. So you might be looking at an engine that has, you know, like, say for instance, the A-Moon 7. It has 15,000 thrust, but it has a power of 2, which means I would need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these engines, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, to get the full power out of all of these. This would give me a total thrust of 15,400 times 6, right? And 2,200 times 6. And then you would have to multiply that out. So which one is actually better? Is this engine, which is 3, which is I'm only capable of 4 with these, but I have 19,920 times 4. And this is where we could use a calculator. I would strongly recommend that you use a calculator in these scenarios. So for instance, we have 19,920, right? So 19,920 times 4, which is a total maximum thrust of 79,680, right? And with these, we have 15,400 times 6, which is 92,400. So there is more thrust with the smaller engines than with the larger engine. However, let's look at the mass. So the mass on these engines is 137 times 4, which gives us a total mass of 548. The smaller engines have a mass of 94 times 6, which means that we have a slightly more mass of 564 over 548. Then we also have maneuvering thrust. So which one's better with maneuvering thrust, right? You might have a better top speed with the smaller engines, but do you have a better maneuvering capability? And so forth and so on. This is where things get complicated. So 5,040 times 4 gives us a maneuvering capability of 20,160, right? Then we can take the maneuvering capability of these, which is 2,200 times 6, which gives us a maneuvering capability of 13,200. So as you can see, these smaller engines are far less maneuverable. They will give you more of a top speed, but they also weigh more. And so things come into odd considerations here with how you would particularly want to use your engines. Are you considering just trying to go as fast as humanly possible? Are you trying to minimize the amount of mass that you're using on your ship? Because even just mass-wise, these engines are less mass with less thrust, right? And then you got things like the big old honkin' C engines, which weigh like 340 mass for one engine. So things get really complicated there. Yes, they provide a lot of thrust and a lot of maneuvering, but they also weigh an awful lot, and they can lower your top speed and mobility rather considerably. So this is just another one of the considerations that you should take into account. Moving on to the next, which is the cockpit. So the cockpit is a really awesome one, and it's definitely something that you're going to have to consider. There are tons of different cockpits, but the one thing I will tell you about the cockpits that's the most important is the crew stations. So when you're looking at the cockpits, you have access to a small number, usually on most planets. And for instance, the cockpit that I have access to right now, the Deimos 40.2 Ares Bridge, is actually something that you will not find unless you go specifically to a place that has this module. And again, like I said, I was going to talk about this later. Now, the last one that we need to talk about is your shield generator. So your shield generator also has the same considerations as the engines, max power, as well as maximum shield strength. And this is important because when you're looking at the shield, it's not just about the shield strength that it offers, it's also about the maximum power that the shield requires to reach that shield strength. So for instance, if I go to the shields right now and I take a look at some of the shields, you can just simply get a good idea based on the maximum power requirements. So for instance, right now I have the SG 3000 shield, which is a 10 max power with 1,190 total HP. Right? So if I take a calculator and I divide this, I can go 1,190 divided by 10 gives us a total shield per point of 119, which means that we get 119 shields per point of energy that we put into the shields at any given point. We may not have max power into our shields. This one in particular, that is the SG 1800 that I'm currently using, is 1600 at 12. So we take our 1600 and divide that by 12, and we get a per shield output of 133 0.3, which is slightly more than this particular shield, right? So let's take the 133.3 times 10, which is the maximum power of this shield, which is 1,333 HP, which means that if we were to take this 1800 shield, the one that we currently have, put 10 points of power into it, which is the same number of points of power that you can put into the Assurance SG3000, we actually get more out of this one than we do the other. This is some sort of experimental shield module, the SG1800. As you can see, it requires Starship Design rank 4. The 3000 only requires Starship Design rank 3, and this means that this one in particular is actually lower than this one, despite the fact that this is a higher model, because it is an experimental model. This one actually offers the best shield to point of energy ratio out of all the shields that I've currently found. There may be a better shield than this later, but like I said, we're gonna talk about why certain modules won't appear than others. What else is left? Weapons. So we have a couple different major qualifications for weapons. First off, when you're talking about weapons, we have the missile launchers. All right, there are tons of missile launchers within the game. We've got freaking hundreds of them. We go down to like the biggest, baddest missile launcher, which is the Atlee 280C missile launcher. It does 277.19 and 277.1 to hull and shields, and as you can see, it requires a max power of 4. Now, similarly to the engines, the maximum power means that you can only have that number of them on the ship. Remember, maximum power for any module is 12, so 4 or 12 divided by 4, which is 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 3 of these missile launchers is something that you could put on your ship. All right. Now, these are mainly used when the shields go down for the most part. You can use them before the shields go down, but it really helps to use them after the shields go down. You do need a full lock-on for missile launchers to work properly, and they're not the most amazing things in the world, in my opinion. I like to focus on other guns. Next on the list, besides missile launchers, is the particle beam cannons. Particle beam cannons are weapons that fire very good damage streams. In fact, I have particle beam weapons on my ship right now. I'm using the Obliterator 250 MeV Alpha Beams, which is 55 damage to hull and 55 damage to shields. These, honestly, are the best weapons in the game, in my opinion. I have played around with all the other weapons, and these things will rip ships apart with extreme expediency. And you might be asking, why do I have another weapon on my ship? I'll talk about that later. The particle beam cannons don't require you to alternate weapon types because they do the same amount of damage to both shields and hull, same as your, well, missiles would do if you could lock onto the target whenever you wanted to. Now, these come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Anything that's a particle beam cannon is generally going to have both the same attacks in both hull and shield. So as you can see, this is a PB-100 neutron beam. Now, don't be fooled by these ones that say auto turret. So the auto turrets are actually not something that you can fire yourself. The auto turrets fire automatically on their own, and I've had a lot of bad luck with the auto turrets. I don't particularly like them, but they are basically the same gun that you have that you can fire on your own, but in a turret form, which is supposed to fire automatically. And these exist all over the place. As you can see, here's the PB-175 Helion Beam, and then there's the Helion Beam Auto, which just kind of like, the Auto Neutron Turret. So we got the Neutron Beam and then the Neutron Turret. If it says turret on it, you cannot fire it yourself. Another type of weapon that we have is the Laser Beam. So the laser beams are specifically utilized for taking out shields. As you can clearly see by the damage numbers on the left, the laser beams have very high shield damage, but very low on the actual hull damage. They also tend to be very short ranged too, as you can see here on some of the lasers. This one is only 1,210 range. We have other lasers here. This is the pulse laser, is 1500 range. This one is 1800 range, and so forth and so on. The lasers tend not to have as good range as some of the other choices, and I've definitely noticed that the lasers just don't really tend to be the greatest for firing at things that are really far away. Even the early lasers are 1500, as you can see in the Class A category. Now, as we talked about earlier, all weapons have class restrictions, so you can't put Class C weapons on a Class B ship if you have a Class B reactor. What makes your ship a Class B or Class C? It is the reactor itself. That is what makes your ship a Class B or Class C, is the reactor. So if you're running a Class B reactor or a Class A reactor, you cannot use anything above your class. Another qualification of gun is the basically just actual real projectiles. So the cannons that fire actual projectiles are mainly hull damage, and they will not affect shields. These are the ones that you usually use in tandem with the lasers. So for instance, if we go down and find a really high level one, say a Class C, I'm sure there's a Gauss gun. There we go. So the MKE-9 Gauss gun is 162 hull damage with only 19 shields, and it also only has a very short range of 1,512. So you really can't fire these weapons from very far away at all, the laser and the Gauss gun. This is one of the reasons why I still think that the particle cannons are way better, because they have basically double the range and they dish out damage to both hull and shields, and they're basically always useful, as opposed to the other ones which are not always useful. Kind of get my drift. And then lastly, we have some very interesting guns, which are the electromagnetic pulse guns. Now, these are some of the electromagnetic pulse guns that I have on my ship, the EMP 1000 suppressors. And the EMP 1000 suppressors, as you can see, do 1 hull damage, 1 shield damage, which is basically nothing, and 54 electromagnetic damage. And you might be asking, well, what the hell is electromagnetic damage? Well, I tested this out myself, and I can tell you for a fact that these guns are absolutely amazing, because they damage modules. Now, you do have to bring down the enemy's shields for these to work, but when you fire electromagnetic guns at a ship, the EM damage will actually start to deactivate modules on their ship, including their engines, their reactor, their grav drive, their shields, and their lasers, particle cannons, and weapons, and all sorts of things. You can basically deactivate just about every module on an enemy ship without destroying the ship, by the way. Which means that once you're able to disable their engines, you can board their ship and steal it. This is actually the best way if you want to disable enemy ships on a regular basis. I recommend using electromagnetic guns. They are absolutely amazing. Now, a big issue with the electromagnetic guns is they have very short range, only 968. But trust me when I say that the ability to completely disable a ship, and I mean completely, you can literally break every single module on their ship, their grav drive, their shields, their engines, their missile launchers, their particle cannons, their lasers, their freaking Gauss gun, all of it. Everything can be deactivated by using the EM cannons, and if you fire enough EM shots at a ship, you will disable every module on the ship and render it completely impotent, and you can go about your business destroying all the other ships while that ship tries its best to repair all the modules that you've disabled. And when you take the ship back to the port, you don't have to worry about all the ship modules being broken, because you are literally just laughing at them because they didn't actually break anything. You just disabled them temporarily, right? So you still get to actually use the module after after a delay and after a little bit of time, it starts to come back, and eventually you can use that module again. It's actually a really awesome gun type. It's not meant for destroying the ships, but more or less just disabling them, which is really cool. And that covers all the gun types. Lastly, or not even lastly, we got so much more to go over, so let's just keep on going. So the next thing that we need to talk about is the weight of the ship and the number of landing gear. So landing gear is a pretty simple one. When you take a look at landing gear, it has 2 stats. It has lander thrust and hull. Hull is basically just going to add to your HP pool. And the lander thrust is how many of these landing gear you actually need to land your ship. Now, depending on the weight of your ship, what you're going to notice is that the thing's going to yell at you and it's going to tell you that you don't have enough landers. If I were to delete one of these landers right now, in the errors, it will say minimum landing gear count. Ship has too few landing gears, which is letting me know that I am currently too few for the weight that I have. Now, when you look through the actual landing gear, you'll notice that every single landing gear is different. There is landing gear that has 1 thrust. There's landing gear that has 2 thrust. There's landing gear that has 4 and 4. There's 2. There's 1s. My recommendation, if you want to go with the least number of landing gear, is to go with the one that has the highest amount of thrust, because this means that you will have to have the least number of landing gear. However, if you throw on these little baby landing gears, the problem with these is they may not actually give you enough landing gear. So as you can see here, despite the fact that I added one of these landing gear to the ship, and it looks like it doesn't want to go right there. It's a little bit too tall for that position. Hold on. Let's just put it like right here. Despite the fact that I put this landing gear here, you know, I deleted one, I put one back, right? Well, this one only has 1 thrust, and the one that I had before had 4 thrust. So this one landing gear is not going to be enough to make up for the loss of a 4 landing gear. And now that I have 2 of these landing gear in place, it's still not enough. And it's just going to continue being like that the entire time, because I would need an insanely large number of these landing gear to make up for the 4 thrust of the others. So I recommend that if you're going to put landing gear on your ship, you go with the ones that have higher thrust, so you don't have to put as many. Another thing is your landing bay. So the landing bay is a very simple thing. It's just going to be where you get on and off your ship. Some of the landing bays are cooler than others, in my opinion, but they do have to be connected to a habitation module, and the habitation module has to have access to your cockpit. If you have your lander in a place that is not accessible to the cockpit of the ship, it's going to tell you something along the lines of an error message of this does not access. As you can see, landing bay needs to be connected to the cockpit, cannot reach cockpit from the landing bay. So the only important thing with the landing bay is that, number one, it's on the same level as the landing gear, because it cannot be below the landing gear. And number two, you just need to make sure that it does have access to the cockpit in some way, shape, or form. Next on the list is the docking module. There's tons of different docking modules in the game. The only real important thing for the docking modules is that they actually work. For instance, if you use a top docker, it needs to be accessible in a way that actually is above all the other modules on the ship. In other words, if you put it below the other modules on the ship at a different level, at a lower level than what it should be, like for instance, let's say, just as a thing here, let me take the docker, move it down here. Right? So if I put it down here, now it's lower than the rest of the ship. So it's going to tell me docker modules need to be on the outside edge of the ship, because if it's not, well, then you can't actually access the docker module to dock your ship, right? So it's just one of the many things that you've got to deal with. I think we've gone over just about everything. Let's talk about equipment. So equipment is a tab that you will not see in most ports. As you can see here, I have lots of equipment, lots of tabs, but I don't have an equipment tab. There is no equipment tab, and the reason for this is because equipment is only available at very specific vendors. There is lots of different equipment that you can get within the game. Some of it is quest related, like this conduction grid. This is a quest item that is only obtainable through the Crimson Fleet quest. There is also the conduction grid, or the comm spike. The comm spike and the conduction grid are both equipment pieces that can only be obtained through the Crimson Fleet quest, and I have never been able to obtain them any other way, and it really kind of sucks. I even tried to cheat them in and was unsuccessful that way as well. The scan jammer is only obtainable from Lon Anderson at the one of the clandestine locations, which, if I remember correctly, is the Crimson Mile. So if you go to the Crimson Mile, you can get access to the scan jammer, and you need this to be able to bypass security and bring your contraband onto the planet. Speaking of contraband, you are going to need a shielded cargo module as well if you want this to work. So you need the scan jammer, and you also need the shielded cargo module on your ship, both of which in combination will allow you to bypass security. It's also important to note that if the item is not in the ship, it doesn't work. You can't have it on your person. You have to actually put it on your ship. More topics. We got so many topics to go over here. We've gone over everything except for cargo containers. Let's talk about cargo containers real quick. I'm not sure if we actually went over these, but cargo containers basically are how you add cargo storage to your ship. The more cargo containers you have, obviously, the more cargo your ship is capable of holding. However, the more of these containers that you add to your ship, the more weight you are adding to your ship, and it gets pretty ridiculous. This one right here adds 312 mass to the ship, and will continue to add more mass to the ship for every single one of these that you add. And the more of them you add, the heavier the ship gets, and the heavier the ship gets, guess what? Now we've got errors. The ship has too few landing gears. So your ship gets heavier, your jump range goes down, your mobility goes down, and also you have to add more landing gear so that your ship doesn't get crushed under its own weight, so that when it lands on the planet, it can actually support its weight on those landing gears. It takes a little bit of a balance to get the right amount of cargo space on your ship. However, let me give you a very big piece of advice here. Notice that my ship currently has 8,500 cargo, right? Remember that number, 8,500 cargo. However, if I get on my ship and I actually take a look at my cargo on my ship, what you'll notice is that I have a lot more than 8,500. So one of the things that I would recommend that you do, and this helps with Starship Design tremendously, is that you upgrade the skill called Payload. And look at how much cargo capacity my ship has. I have 11,050, not 8,500, but 11,050. And this is because of the skill known as Payload. And if I can get it to come up, can I bring out my payload, Jank, please? So payloads increases your ship cargo capacity by 10%, 20%, 30%, and then 50%. A 50% increase in your cargo capacity is massive, and it's definitely something that I would recommend that you get your hands on. Right now I'm only at 30, but with a little bit more of a nudge, I'm over up onto the maximum amount, which is something I actually already have. I had to go back to an older save to show you guys this stuff. But it's a massive bump. Just think about it. If you have 5,000 cargo capacity on your ship, with a 50% bump, you're sitting at 7,500, which is amazing, right? So that means that you can then have less mass on your ship, better mobility, less landing gears, etc., etc., etc. All right. Now we're going to talk about a more complicated subject, which is a little bit difficult to go over in mass. So I'm going to just show you some of the stuff that I've been working on, and to do this we're gonna have to take out the Frankenship. So I did a lot of work on a random ship specifically for the purposes of showing off certain things, and I'm gonna show you my Frankenship. This is my horrible Frankenship. I called it Hero Editor after Diablo 2. So in the Frankenship, I've basically gone through the process of testing out a large number of habitation modules. There's a ton of modules in this game, and you probably haven't seen them all. And there's a reason why you haven't seen all the modules. It's because they don't exist at every starport. So there are three... I think three. I'll add some more in there if I remember. There are different starports that offer different options, okay? And to go over these, I need to bring up a little notepad here real quick, and we're going to talk about the different starports. All right, so number one, the worst starport for number of modules is your outpost. Yes, I know. It's sad. Don't build your ship at your outpost. All right. Number 2, every company location has special company only modules. All right. This is important. So, for instance, if you want the special Stroud Eklund modules, you have to go to the Stroud Eklund Staryard. All right. This is important because if you don't go to the Stroud Eklund Staryard, you won't have access to the Stroud Eklund modules. Number 3, Starship Design ranks activate new items, right? Or let's say modules. Number 4, piloting activates new modules. Yes, piloting also activates new modules. Some modules it gets really complicated. Some modules are locked behind quests. Number 6, some modules are locked behind level. Okay, there are a lot of different classifications here, a lot of big qualifications. And to show you guys that I'm not full of BS, let me show you what I mean. So if I go into this module here real quick and I pull up the ship builder, you'll notice that in the habitation modules, we'll use the habitation modules because this is the easiest one. In the Habs, you'll notice that we really don't have a lot of larger modules other than a 1x1, a 2x1. We've got 3x1s here, right? But we've got engineering bay, living quarters. That's about it, right? Nothing too fancy there. We've got the armory, the control station. These are all 2x1 modules. And then we've got the 3x1 engineering. But we don't have a lot of anything else as far as 3x1 modules go. They really don't give you access to a large number of the modules in this way. However, if we take a quick trip over to the, for instance, the Stroud Eklund or the Deimos Staryard, there's quite a few different Staryards out there, and you may have to hunt and peck for the specific brand that you're looking for. But for instance, let's go, I believe the Deimos Staryard is in the Sol system, so let's go to the Deimos Staryard. And when you go to the Deimos Staryard, you're going to notice a whole lot of modules that didn't exist before. Things that that you really kind of wish you had access to. And it does get pretty ridiculous in terms of options. Options that just weren't there before. Alright, so let's go ahead and dock.
Any adventure you can fly away from. Is that how the saying goes?
Alright, so we go to our man Nikau here, and we're going to go to View Modify Ships, and we're going to take a look at our ship, and we're going to go to the ship builder and go to Add Modules. And now when we go to the Habitation modules, what you're going to see is that now we have access to some crazy stuff, like we have access to the battle stations, the brig, the cargo hall, the computer core, the engineering bay, the 2x2 living quarters. These are very large modules. Like for instance, where is it? The battle stations is a really good one to add to your ship. It has some very interesting components in it. And this is one thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to the different modules is why choose one module over another. Like for instance, I currently have a battle station in my ship. If I go down and I take a look here, my battle stations is the Deimos battle stations. So why specifically did I choose the Deimos battle station over the Nova Galactic or the Stroud Eklund, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Well, there's specific reasons. The layout of the battle station may be better than what I was otherwise interested in. How the lighting is, whether there's other modules in there, and this is where I bring up another notepad. So this is a notepad that I actually did, spent an entire day, and if you would like to check out that video, I spent literally almost like 12 hours working on starships that day. So if you think this video is long, go watch that one. And in this video, I came across a lot of very interesting little tidbits of knowledge. Number one, no parts can be shared between ships. It's very sad. Number two, all parts are sold for 10% of their value when removed, which is also very sad. Specific parts are only available at specific dealers, which means you have to travel to every single dealer to buy the parts and check them out and decide. This is what I'm telling you guys about right now. Shipbuilding wastes all your money for basically nothing. It's actually quite sad. It does. If you don't put in the knowledge or the work to figure this stuff out, you're just going to end up wasting hundreds of thousands of credits really quick. Number 5, you cannot bank any parts for later, which is also very sad. So you can't like take a part off a ship and hold on to it and then put it on another ship. It doesn't work. So I spent hours going over all the different habitation modules and looking at all of them and seeing which ones were the best and why they were the best. And some of this is subjective. It may be due to bad lighting or I just didn't really like the layout of the area. But a lot of it actually has to do with their utility and what made them useful. The captain's quarters has a navigation console, and that's about it. There's really not a lot of other reason to use a captain's quarters. The control station has a pretty large amount of crew that it adds to the ship, so if you want to add more crew to the ship, you can do that. However, I will make a very quick detour here in that if you want to add more crew to your ship, do note that there is a maximum number of crew that you can have on your ship, and you do need to eventually grab the which one is it? Ship Command. So Ship Command is a skill that allows you to have more active crew members on your ship. So this one in particular, you can have up to 4 active crew members on the ship. This one is you can have up to 5, 6, and then 8. And having active crew members on your ship is important because they add skills and other abilities to your ship, which you can see by using the crew option here. As you can see, Barrett gives me Starship Engineering 3, Particle Beam Weapons 3, Robotics, Gastronomy, etc. Each individual crew member may bring various things to the table, like, for instance, better particle beam shots from Andrea and energy weapon systems, etc. So having more crew members is definitely good, but keep in mind that you really can't have more than your skill allows you to have. All right. On top of this, the control station really doesn't do anything else other than give you crew members. I believe it's 4 crew members. The all-in-one berths are all pretty garbage, except for some reason, the Nova Galactic. The Nova Galactic all-in-one berth, the 2x1, has a research station, a cooking station, a bed, a navigation console, and a toilet. It's probably one of the best all-in-one modules that I've ever seen, and if you're looking for a module that gives you all that, then the all-in-one by Nova Galactic does. The other ones do not. Very oddly so. The armory, the Nova Galactic, is actually honestly the best laid out, and it just looks the most awesome. So it has 2 little mannequins and all sorts of other things in there. It is an absolutely amazing armory. The computer core is kind of useless, and I honestly would suggest not putting it on your ship, but Nova Galactic's is the best. The infirmary has a research and a pharmaceutical lab in it, and it's one of the good reasons to choose it because it's one of the only ways that you can get a pharmaceutical lab besides the science habitation module. The Deimos one seemed to be the best in terms of just about layout and everything. So if you want to grab an infirmary, I would grab the Deimos infirmary. Living quarters, Tayo seemed to be the best. Not really a whole lot of reason to add a living quarters. I do believe it adds more passenger space in case you want to transfer passengers, but other than that, not really any more of a reason other than that to add it. The science module, the Tayo, again, one with the research and pharmaceutical. As you can see, the infirmary and the science module are interchangeable as they both give the same modules, and you really don't necessarily need both of these. You really only need one for the research and pharmaceuticals, and you can kind of boot the other one. The workshop is amazing. And there's two workshops that really kind of stuck out to me. One is the Stroud Eklund. The Stroud Eklund workshop has a research station. It has a weapon station, it has a spacesuit station, and it has an industrial station. The Nova Galactic one was really cool too, but it does not have a research station. Now, I don't necessarily see this as a negative, and I do really like the way that the Nova Galactic one looks and is laid out better than I like the way that the Stroud Eklund one was laid out. However, keep in mind that if you have a science or infirmary on your ship that has access to the pharmaceutical, which you're probably going to do so you have the pharmaceutical on your ship, you will also have access to the research station. And you won't necessarily need the research station in your workshop. So the Nova Galactic research station really kind of stood out to me as the clear winner. However, if you don't want to put a science or an infirmary on your ship, the Stroud Eklund workshop with the addition of the research station wins by far. However, you could also do the all-in-one berth with the Nova Galactic, which does have the research station on it as well, so keep that in mind. Going forward, we also have the companionways. Honestly, the companionways suck balls, and there is absolutely no reason to put a companionway on your ship. I checked out all of the companionways from all of the manufacturers in all of the configurations, and they all suck. They have nothing in them except for like crap on the walls that is like tied up there that you can't interact with. There's no storage containers, there's no modules, there's no beds, there's nothing. The companionways are terrible, and I even checked them out a couple different ways, thinking maybe the doorways might, have been messing with things, and quite honestly, they just suck. I would recommend that instead of a companionway or a storeroom, by the way, the storerooms also suck balls, and also just are basically just as bad as the companionways. There are these very interesting modules that are only obtainable through the manufacturers, and let me see if I can show you one of these right now. This one is... Let me just pull up a random ship. It really doesn't matter. Let's see if they have one of them here. Not all of the manufacturers have access to these things, but some of them do. They're usually in the habitation section. These do not have them. So basically what it is it's a connecting way between two areas. It's just like a passageway. Think about like a hallway. And they're kind of like hallway modules. Nova Galactic has access to one, which is a hallway module, and I believe Stroud Eklund, I think, is the other company that has access to them. And they basically just allow you to connect two modules together and make a passageway between those modules, because really what I found out is that these companionways, all they really are for the most part is a way for you to connect two modules together. But the problem with them is that because they have a door on all four sides, they may not connect the way you want, which makes the actual ones that connect as a hallway in only two directions a little bit more useful, because you can more readily control the direction of the connections between your modules, and it works out better. Next on the list is the larger modules. So the 3x1 engineering bay, no modules at all. So it really kind of just sucks. Storage, the Tayo ones look best. Stroud, Eklund. It really, honestly, it really doesn't matter, these big giant ones. So let me go through these big giant ones and talk about these real quick. The 2x2s. So the Stroud Eklund battle station, or rather all the battle stations, are pretty good. They have 6 crew stations, and they have a navigation console, which is pretty awesome. And the navigation console allows you to just instantly pull up the navigation window, and from as long as you're next to it, and just travel. I definitely recommend the battle stations for your ship because not only does it add a huge number of crew slots, but it also adds the navigation console, which you can get other ways. The brig is really cool, although it doesn't really add a whole lot of extra functionality. There are 2 beds in it, and quite honestly, I think the brig is just really awesome looking, functionally, like just adds a lot to the ship as a, you know, thematic kind of a thing, like, oh, I have a brig and prisoners, and we must fly them out of here, right? However, it doesn't really add anything to the ship other than that. It's really just eye candy. The cargo hull is completely useless. There's basically nothing in it except for maybe like 1 or 2 storage containers. Has no functional use, no passenger increase, no crew increase, and doesn't have anything in it that's actually useful. It's really just there to take up space. The computer core, same thing. It really is there just to take up space. It kind of sucks. It does have 2 crew stations, though, which makes it a little bit better than the cargo hull. The engineering bay has 2 crew stations as well, but also similarly doesn't really have a whole lot of anything in it, and it's really just eye candy. It doesn't even look cool, to be honest, in my opinion. And then the living quarters has 3 passenger slots, which might be a good reason for you to choose it. And some of the living quarters actually did look really cool. I really did enjoy, like, the Nova Galactic 2x3. I thought that one was absolutely amazing. The Nova Galactic 2x3 is pretty cool. And then we also have the mess halls. So there is the 2x3 mess hall, which is absolutely massive for no reason. And same as the cargo hall. And same as the smaller cargo hall, it's completely useless. There's nothing inside. It's just empty space. It's really just eye candy, and it doesn't even give any good effects. Next is the mess hall, which does add 3 passenger slots. And some of these are actually really cool. They have dartboards. They have TVs. They've got some really interesting layouts that honestly seem really cool for a ship thematically. The addition of the passenger slots also makes them pretty neat. I ended up choosing a 2x3 Nova Galactic mess hall for my ship, and I can show you what that looks like. In fact, you know what? Let's go take a look at some of the modules that I ended up choosing for my ship, and I can tell you why I ended up choosing them. Because I went through hours and hours going through all of these different modules, and why not at least show you some of them, right? So I talked about the battle station, and the battle station is... I didn't mean to exit the ship. The battle station is probably one of the coolest modules because it offers a navigation console right in the center. This is the one that I really like, was the navigation console right in the center. Tons of crew seats all over the place that the crew can sit down and have fun with. And on top of this, it's huge, right? So you can use this to pad out your ship if you need to. It has multiple connection points, works really good to connect directly to the bridge and whatnot. And being able to hit the navigation console and instantly bring up navigation is pretty awesome, right? The workshop, this is the workshop that has access to the spacesuit workbench, the weapon workbench, the industrial workbench. And if you do the Stroud, was it the Stroud Eklund? I can't, let me pull up my sheet real quick. If you get the Stroud Eklund one, you also get a research station in the Stroud Eklund one as well. Although I do feel like the layout of the Stroud Eklund one isn't as nice as this one. This one has a really nice layout. Over here we have the armory. This is the Nova Galactic armory, and I really like it because it's got the 2 mannequin cases here and here, and then it also has all the weapon things. I did have these all loaded up, and let me give you a word of warning. If you change your ship at any point, everything gets taken out of here, which kind of sucks. And then there's this little extra room here on the end, which does have some more weapon cases. I think this one is one of my favorites for the armories. I went over all the different armories, and I had a lot of fun playing around with all of them, and this is really just the one that struck out at me as the best one. On the other side here, this is, I believe, the captain's quarters. One of the captain's quarters, or several of the captain's quarters, have navigation consoles in them. And this is the one that I was interested in putting on my ship. You don't necessarily need this one, though. The captain's quarters is definitely a module that you could skip if you don't want to. But it's an easy way to get yourself a navigation console if you can't get access to any of the other modules. This is the brig. And like I told you guys, the brig is just amazing eye candy. I mean, you've got literal brigs here with a little toilet in them. They got some beds and whatnot, and you can like lock and unlock the doors. It's really cool, so you can actually close the doors on the prisoners. This one right here is currently locked down, and you can open the control panel and unlock it. It's got a little fancy desk here, so you can sit down and pretend to be the warden, and it's just really cool. I really do enjoy the brig. This is the control station. The control station really doesn't have a lot in it, but it does have little chairs for your guys to sit down in, which is one of the reasons why I chose to put this in the thing, so I'd have more crew slots. Unfortunately, though, until you actually get access to that skill that lets you put more crew members on your ship, you're not really going to be doing much of anything. Up here is the mess hall. This is the mess hall, and as you can see, we got places for people to sit and eat. There's a freaking galley back here, which is pretty cool. There's a little chair where people can sit down. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in here. You know, little couches, little places people can play cards. And honestly, I really like the look of the mess hall. I think it adds a lot to the ship. It's open, doesn't feel all tight and confined. There are some issues with the way that the habitation modules connect together, and I was talking about that earlier with the hallways, but it's mainly the ladders. The ladders form wherever they want to, and you may find that it's very difficult to control exactly where the ladders spawn on your ship, and you might get in your ship and not even know where the hell the ladders are. This is something that I've encountered myself, and as far as I know, there is no way to fix it. The hallways help a little bit, because in general, if you can control how two modules are connecting together, you might be able to better control where the ladders are spawning. But for instance, with some of these modules, like for instance the brig, there's no direct connection to the brig here. There's no direct connection to the brig here. I can't get to the brig through here, right? But they put the doorway over here on the other side of the captain's quarters, which was a little odd, especially considering there's a point there, a point there, you know, like many different points that they could have put a door here. Probably right here would have been better, right? So if I put a hallway right here, it most likely will not put a door right there. And that's kind of how things are going inside the ship, is it changes around a lot like a slippery eel. Now, speaking of other modules, let's go and take a look at one of the cheated characters. So, in this video, I wanted to give you an idea of just how many modules there are out there and how many different ways that you can configure your ship. And to do this, the only way that I can really do this is to take you to a NPC that has been unlocked, so to speak. So we need to go to an NPC that has been unlocked. And the only one that I know of is at the Red Mile. The Red Mile is a special... Or was it the Red Mile? I can't even remember which place it was. Let me pause the recording. I'm going to go find him, and then we will continue from there. Now, before I show you the NPC, I also want to show you this, which is basically which vendors specialize in which parts. So, Amun Dunn specializes in reactors. Ballistic Solutions Incorporated specializes in ballistic weapons and fuel tanks. Deep Core specializes in cargo holds and grav drives. Deimos specializes in creating ship parts with highly defensive characteristics. Dogstar specializes in shields, cargo holds, and reactors. HopeTech, a great all-around manufacturer with solid parts in every category. Horizon Defense specializes in ballistic and energy weapons. Light Scythe specializes in energy weapons. Nautilus specializes in shields and fuel tanks. Panoptes specializes in engines. Nova Galactic specializes in habs and landing gear and structures. Protectorate Systems specializes in cargo holds. Relodyne specializes in engines and grav drives. Sextant Shield Systems specializes in shielded cargo holds. Shinigami specializes in energy weapons. Slayton Aerospace specializes in grav drives. Stroud Eklund specializes in structures, aesthetics, both inside and outside. Tayo and Astroneering specializes in cockpits and habs, and Xiang specializes in reactors. And this is important because each one of these manufacturers has specific parts that only they sell. Now, in the star system of Valo, there is a town called Hope Town. Nova Galactic functions out of Hope Town. Nova Galactic is one of the ones that I told you had some of the best modules, and I definitely recommend that you take a look at this one. This one's a little bit hard to come by. Some of them are more obvious, like for instance, Teo has a showroom, and Deimos has a Staryard, Stroud Eklund has a Staryard, and so forth and so on. But certain places only have access to certain modules. So if you want to go get access to specific brand modules, you got to go to the specific places that are utilizing those items. Like for instance, this is a Hope Tech, not Nova Galactic, so I think I may have said Nova Galactic, but this is one of the ones that has the cross braces. So for instance, this is a hallway module. Notice that this literally just allows you to make a one-way hallway. There is also a hallway that goes in the other direction. So you can connect two modules directly together using these, and it will make sure that they are connected in the direction that you want, which is absolutely epic for trying to make sure that you get things how you want them to. And they look exactly as you would imagine. They're just hallways. So this is the Hope Tech facility, and obviously you can get all of the Hope Tech modules here. They have access to special star drives and all sorts of other things. Like, look at this freaking Grav Drive with 45 jump thrust. Let's see what they have for reactors. What do they got for reactors? They have up to a Pinch 7Z, which is a 32 powered reactor. They have a SF30 sheared flow, which is 34. This one seems a little bit better, but they're both pretty nice reactors. Ion Beam H1030 reactor. It looks pretty cool. Looks like a freaking like Decepticon orange color. All right. But I want you guys to see what it's like to see all the modules at the same time. And to do this, I'm going to have to activate a little bit of a cheat here. So we're going to choose the actor here. And I'm going to do a cheat code, essentially. And this is a mod that you can download if you want to download it. It basically allows you to have an unrestricted vendor, essentially. And there's really not a lot more to it other than that. It's essentially just an unrestricted vendor. And let me see if I can show you this module real quick. Looks like they've done some more modifications to this particular doojink. They got an EXE version now. It's definitely been updated a little bit since the last time I've taken a look at it. But basically what this does is it allows you to have access to all of the modules at the same time on the same vendor. Unfortunately, it does not work with the one from the Outpost, as I talked about earlier, which kind of sucks. I still have the old one installed, though. Give me just a second. I just need to pull up the older version. Personally, I think that there's a lot of things that should be modded for the for these things, but let me just see if I can go ahead and do this. I believe it's Bat Starship I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head. See, this is what I get for being unprepared. 1 second here. I should be able to pull it up. So basically what this does, though, is it activates all the modules on the same unit. This way, you can basically have everything active to, play around with, as opposed to having to go to multiple different vendors. And this one is Starship Yard Cheat. I think I gotta put it in quotations. Huh. Why did you have to go change it literally right after I did it? It looks like his new version is actually easier to use, though, than the previous version that I was using. The original file version. Ignore ship. It's got a lot of interesting things here. Unlimited shield count, unlimited reactor count, ignore reactor class requirements, ignore ship size. There's a lot of very interesting things like that, and I don't know if I talked about this before, but you can only have one reactor, you can only have one shield, etc. These are limits that were placed within the game. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and pause this, figure this out. I'll be right back. All right. So I went ahead and activated the cheats on this particular individual. And let's take a look and see what he has to offer me now for my ship.
Okay, no problem.
So we're going to go to our ship builder, and we're going to go to G. And I want you guys to notice that now he has access to the habitation modules. Basically all the habitation modules. Or no, he still doesn't have access to... Did I not? I may not have selected him correctly. Let's make sure we did this right, shall we? So let's exit out of here. You got to make sure that you select the technician specifically. And we're going to go to Bat Shipyard Cheat, which is going to add all the keywords to him. Bat Shipyard Pirate, which is going to add all the pirate shipyards to him. And then Corpo, we're going to do Bat Shipyard Corpo, which is going to add all the Corpo mechanisms to him. And that should allow us
I'm sure you can find something.
to purchase all of the modules.
Okay, no problem.
I'm going to be embarrassed if I can't. There we go. So notice now we have access to, let's go over here. Now we have access to all the modules from all the different ships companies. So we've got all the Deimos modules. We have all the Hope Tech modules, right? We've got even the things that are like fuselages and things like that that actually look like part of ships. We also have access to the Nova Galactic, including the Nova Galactic Cross Passage that I was telling you guys about earlier, as well as the Stroud Eklund, the Tayo, All of these are in the system now. On top of this, you now have access to all of the Grav Drives, but not all of the Grav Drives. So we're going to talk about this later, but you don't have access to all the Grav Drives, but you do have access to all the Grav Drives, and we're gonna have to talk about this. Also, all the landing gear, and all the dockers, all the cockpits, including some of the really cool cockpits, like, for instance, the Cabot C4 bridge, which is pretty amazing, the Con Tiki Bridge 600, which is pretty cool, and my personal favorite, which is the big giant turtle, called the DS40 Ares. That's the one I'm currently using on my ship, which is absolutely amazing. Absolutely like the Ares models. They're just nuts. They also have a navigation console in them, which is pretty cool. They're huge, and they also have 8 crew stations, which is massive. There are certain modules, however, that are restricted by level. So you may not see all the modules in here, and this is very important. So even after you have all the modules unlocked like this, even after everything has been unlocked, there are still going to be certain modules that you won't have access to unless you are a certain level. For instance, I could go ahead and make myself a higher level than I am right now, which I can do by just using a cheat code. So Starfield... level console command, right? So let's just put in the console command, and we're going to change our level to level 100. As far as I am aware, there are no modules past level 100. So we're going to do player set level 100, right? So we're going to change our level to 100. This is going to get us our level 100 character. And then we're going to go back in here, and we're going to take a look at the modules again. Now let's take a look and see what we have access to. So, do I have access to any new shield generators? Looks like I do. I have access to something called the Odin 3050C, which is a 1315 11 max power shield generator, which seems absolutely ridiculous. That was not on my list before, and it looks really cool. Not really sure if that's better than mine, but I could always run the numbers and check. Let's take a look at the reactors. Do we have anything better than my current reactor? So my current reactor is a 34 Fusor DC402, right? Well, DC403 right there. 38 reactor. We also have access now to a Pinch 8Z 40 power reactor, which is 6 better than my current reactor. And we have access to an SF40 sheared flow, which is a 40. So these are way better modules than the ones I was using before, because now I'm a higher level and I have access to those modules, right? So let's take a look at the Grav Drive. So my Grav Drive currently is a 45 jump thrust NG340. What Grav Drives do we have access to? I've got the SGD 45, so that's 45 as well. So it looks like 45 might actually be the cap, so it looks like I was capable of getting the highest one there. Let's take a look at the engines, for instance. So do we have access to any new engines? I would say definitely yes. It looks like we have access to multiple modules of the C-class engines. Far better modules than we had access to before. So the Poseidon DT230 was not available to us before. The Sal 6830 was not available to us before. And neither was the Supernova 2200. Honestly, these new engines make my old engines look like garbage by comparison. However, I am noticing that there's a new version of my engine on here as well. So I'm currently using the 5440. And it looks like we have a 5660 engine on here, which is better than my engine in just about every conceivable way, including being lighter, which means that if I wanted to, I could just simply upgrade this engine straight for that one and have basically no issues whatsoever. It would be a straight swap upgrade. But notice I didn't have access to this engine until I leveled my character up to level 100. So even if you do have all of the amazing things that you need to, Even if you cheat an NPC to give you access to all the modules that you can possibly get access to, one of the things that you're going to find out relatively quickly is that if you're all too low level, you're not going to have access to a lot of those really crazy modules. Even if you have Piloting Rank 4, and even if you have Starship Design Rank 4, you're still not going to have access to some of the modules within the game unless you're a higher level character. So if you're trying to get access to that really nice reactor, if you're trying to get access to that really nice engine or whatever it may be, my recommendation to you is to level up a little bit. Get your character to a higher level. Now, one way that you can get access to modules that you don't normally get access to is to capture a higher level ship. This is important because a lot of people don't realize this, is that you can capture a higher level ship than yourself, something that you might not necessarily be able to
Anything I can help you with?
buy or do anything with. If you capture, say, for instance, you notice right now that my ship currently has a reactor that is a 34 power generated reactor, right? I have a fusor. Of course, I can upgrade that to a 38 right now, which is pretty cool, right? Upgrade it to a few TC 403, but it's still going to be less than this ship that I captured. So if you take a look at this one, this is the UC Navy cargo ship that I captured. I captured this ship, and it has a freaking reactor in it that is a 40 power class reactor. It's absolutely amazing. And it is some sort of experimental module, because when you look and I try and upgrade it, there is no upgrade option better than it. So these experimental modules that you can sometimes find on ships will outclass even the other stuff that you find. And just to make sure that there's nothing else, let's do a quick test real quick, because I haven't tested past level 100. Let's set player level to player 300. All right, we're just going to go ahead and set our level to 300. Now let's check here and see if there's any new modules for our ship. So let's go back into the shields. And is that Odin's 3050 still the best? So for the shields it is. It looks like the Fusor DC. So it does seem as though level 100 seems to be the max. This is what I'm noticing here. So level 100 seems to be the maximum that you can get for modules. So once you hit your level 100 on your character, you're not going to get access to anything new from that point. Which is a little disappointing, but... Oh, wait a minute. What is that? I just saw something in there that didn't belong before. J52 Gamma. Whoa, what are you? That is a 50 grav jump thrust. That is way better than my piddly little 45. And when did that one appear in the list? Did I just not see it last time? They also have the Apollo GV, which is also 50. Let's go back and reset our character back to a lower level. I believe we could do that anyway. Let's set character level back to 50, which I believe... Oh, no. We cannot level down your character, it says. We are unable to level down. So that means that if you use this command to level your character up, you can't go back. That's unfortunate. I think I've covered pretty much everything that I can think of for ship design. There may be more things here or there. If you guys have questions specifically about ship design, I'm trying to think of anything else that we can cover before I end this video, because I really want this to be a fully all-inclusive video on ship design for Starfield. I think the only thing that I really didn't cover is... let's see here. Covered that. Structural. I think that's the only thing I didn't cover is structural. So structural items do not actually offer any benefit to your ship whatsoever, with very few exceptions. They're really just there to either A, make your ship look pretty, B, give you additional places to attach weapons or other modules. You can use them as structural components. Like, for instance, this is an engine mount that you can use to mount an engine on. But for the most part, they really don't have any purpose other than to make your ship look pretty. There are a few exceptions. So up at the top of the list, there are the exceptions. So there are portholes, which will actually give you real windows that you can look out of on your ship, which is really cool. There's top portholes, side portholes, and there's also 4 portholes, which are usually on the front or the back of the ship. There are also equipment plates, which you can use to attach weapons and various pieces of equipment. These are useful if you don't have a already established weapon slot. And then there's also the horizontal weapon mounts, which can also be used for equipment. But for the most part, with the exception of these first couple pieces, everything in here, for the most part, is just cosmetic. It has no actual real purpose other than that. One other little piece of information that I may have forgotten to say, but let me make sure I say this before I end the video, is the height of your actual character or your item. So when you have an item and you're modifying the position of the item and you're trying to attach it to somewhere, using the R and F keys, you can raise and lower your position. And in doing so, you can raise and lower where the piece will attach to. So as you can see here, by hitting the F key, I can make it attach on a lower point, and by hitting the R key, I can make it attach at a higher point. So you can utilize this to attach objects. Another important little piece of information is the ship size restrictions. So landing inside of a city, your ship cannot be more than 40 meters by 40 meters in size. 40 by 40 is your limit for landing in the city. From what I understand, though, you can, however, make an 80 by 80 ship. You just can't land in the cities anymore, and that is a little bit of an issue. It does cause problems with landing. There are mods and things which will change the way that a lot of this works, but I wanted to go over the vanilla portion of the game first before we got into some of the other things. Overall, I've been absolutely enamored with the way that the ship design works, and I've designed such massive beasts as the GGT, which is my Ginger Gaming Turtle. I've also designed the Chunks ship, which basically was just a cargo hauler for quite some time. It was one of my earlier ships, which probably could see some upgrades at this point. I also have the Defiant, which was a ship that I stole, and then ultra modified to be a hell of a lot better than it was. And then I have the ship that I actually stole here also. I stole this one and modified it a little bit, but not a lot. And then this one right here can't be modified at all because it's a Starborn ship and they don't have modifications for these. This ship was one that I used for testing. For no other purpose other than to place modules down, check and see whether I liked that module, and then go from there. As you can see, I even have things like the Nova Galactic bridges so that I can connect 2 modules together. And let me quickly show you what those look like real quick. So let me make this my home ship real quick. And we can go in the Frankenbeast, and I can show you what the hallways look like. They're probably exactly as you would imagine, but it's interesting at least to see them from a perspective of building your own ship.
To be back in our own ship.
I have something you might be interested in.
Alright, so here we are inside the Frankenship, and this might be a little bit difficult because Frankenship is, well, very Franken. But there should be 2 nice long doojanks, if I can't remember where they are, but they're here somewhere, connecting the modules together. And, oh, there's a pool table in this one. I forgot to mention that. So, this one's kind of, it's a decent little pool table. Got little seats. Some of them got TVs, though, which I really kind of like. This is the battle station. And let's go up. So this is one of the hallway modules right here. And as you can see, the Nova Galactic hallway module is literally just that. It is a hallway. Just straight up a hallway in between two modules. It forces a connection between the two modules and makes it easier to determine where the doors are going to be. If you connect two modules together with this, you don't have to worry about them not being connected. You can also, as you can see here, I have two hallways connected to the same modules. So both of these hallways are connected to the same module, and I have two connections going through, which is actually pretty cool because in many cases, if I were to place these two modules directly next to each other, like this one, directly next to this one, there's no guarantee there would even be one door, let alone two, but if there is a door, it's only going to be one door, right? But in this case, I could potentially put as many hallways as I wanted in between two modules. I could actually put 3 or 4, depending on how large the module is, and connect my ship in ways that, well, you know, I otherwise might not be able to. Overall, shipbuilding is one of the most fun things that I have encountered for this particular game, and as I've gone through and really kind of learned which modules I like, which habitation modules I like, why certain modules are not important, making my ships look cool, designing various things into my ships like workstations, which I remember the first time I built my ship, I had no workstations, I had no space station, I had no research station, I had no pharmaceutical lab. It was a travesty. I don't even understand what the hell I was doing or what crack cocaine I was on, because the way that I designed the ship was just terrible. And that's what actually made me go through the process of fixing everything, of figuring everything out, and eventually making this video. As you can see, this is one of the hallways that doesn't connect anywhere. So there's nothing on the other end of this hallway. It's just, there's no Hab module here. But despite the fact that there's no Hab module, it still has the hallway here, which is interesting, right? Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them down in the comments. I will do my best to answer them and help you out. My suggestion to you, though, when it comes to the shipbuilding, is I wouldn't be too... how do I put this? I wouldn't be too worried about getting everything right on the first try. Because it's going to take you a little bit of time to figure everything out, to see which modules that you like. You know, you may have to rearrange things a couple times to get the passageways to go the way that you want. Aesthetically on the inside and aesthetically on the outside, things may not work out the way that you would have hoped. And it's rather unfortunate because sometimes you want to build something a certain way, but you don't really have the options. And I'm hoping that in the future, as things go forward, and mods come out, we may come across, you know, tons and tons and tons of additional cosmetic pieces that we could add to our ships to make them even better than they were before. But until that happens, well, we're stuck with what we've got. And you may not want to go with anything other than vanilla, or maybe you don't have a choice and you're just stuck with the vanilla version of the game. And so I didn't want to make an entire video revolving around the mods of the game when, well, you know, a lot of you guys are stuck within the rules. So for those of you who are interested in those special modules, seek out the individual distributors for those modules. If you're looking for Stroud-Eklund modules, find the Stroud-Eklund Staryard. If you're looking for HopeTech modules, go to Hopetown. If you're looking for the Nova Galactic modules, go to the Nova Galactic place. I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head, but there is an actual place on a planet that does have Nova Galactic modules. Go to the Deimos shipyard if you're looking for the Deimos modules, and so forth and so on. Remember that each individual company is going to sell their product, and that's how they have everything working. As always, thanks for watching, and keep watching.